with regard to braking, I think there's a lot of value to thinking about it critically and analyzing how you drive. Even if you are just a street driver, I start letting off the brake gently, like that. And I let the suspension unload. So if I want to get on the brakes hard, I'm still gonna do it like gentle hard, okay? And what I'm not gonna do, I hope everybody's gonna think I'm a lunatic, is just go bam, like that. Don't just wail on it. It's not a light switch, okay? What's up, people? So I gotta get in this car. I've got all of my super jank, but super professional audio and visual equipment ready to do a video today about braking. I know that sounds super simple. We all do it who drive cars, but it's worth having a conversation about, you know, what's good, what's maybe not so good, how to look at things and where to go. Whether you're driving a manual transmission, automatic transmission, a daily driver go-getter, or a big wild and woolly Dodge Viper like this today. So let's get out of here. Anyway, I've really enjoyed doing a few videos recently. I did one in this car relating to clutches, techniques, different shifting techniques, single clutch, double clutch, toe heel down shifting, all that kind of stuff that, frankly, if it doesn't really help you that much in the nature of how you're driving, maybe you'll get something little out of it just from what we got going on. So thought I'd do this relating to braking. Obviously you can see I'm driving a stick shift car. Hopefully I've actually got my cell phone having the light on here so you can just barely see my feet, but hopefully get the gist of it. On a little incline here. The first technique, really, a lot of people, you can hold your parking brake on an incline, and as the clutch starts to engage and go, you can go like that. Of course, kind of irrelevant for people that are doing an automatic transmission, where if you really needed to, you could left foot brakes. But for me, not a very big incline, just gonna get off the clutch like this real gently and but quickly and get going. Obviously, I do some race driving in different types of cars. It could be something production-based like this, which is heavier, doesn't really have any aerodynamics, and no traction control. And if you guys will forgive me, I'm gonna try to get a little air moving in here so I don't swelter. I hope it doesn't screw up the audio for you. But anyway, so there's that. And then you go into different kind of racing cars where they might have a bit of aerodynamics, so they're very fast or lightweight. You change your technique. For instance, if you're driving a car with a lot of downforce and aerodynamics, you may be going very, very, very fast where it's making the most downforce, and you instantaneously hit the brakes about as hard as you can, and as you lose downforce, you start letting off the brakes a little, so that as the car makes less downforce, you don't lock up the brakes going into a corner. Now, obviously, that's a higher level technique that you're never going to need to know on the street, but I just wanted to bring it up as an example of what to think about. And right now, I'm just gonna start driving and talking about it in general, and then I'll show you guys some things as we come. This is just a normal drive for me, sort of an everyday kind of thing, not trying to be real sporty, just having a little bit of fun while I'm getting where I want to go and talking to you guys. But with regard to braking on the street, the biggest thing you got to think of is ABS, traction control. Because whether you're just driving normally, you're driving a little sportily, whatever it is you're doing, the most important thing to think about at all times while you're driving is, beyond just situational awareness, is the connection of your car to the road. Because at the end of the day, that's what driving is. It's how your car and you are connected to the road. And that is all being done by your tires. I've also done some videos on the importance of tires. And as an example, the kind of people who have Dodge Vipers and stuff like that sit around in their garage forever, and they've got 10, 15-year-old tires that are hard as a rock, and then they go saying the car is junk or unsafe when they just have garbage tires on it because they're not smart enough to put new ones on. I say that because your tires and your connection to the road is your biggest point to performance, as well as your biggest point to safety. Because if you could control your car in any circumstances and maintain good control, direction, stability, braking, and basically just grip with the road, that's how you stay the safest, really. So I want you to be thinking about that, because when I'm driving on the street or on a racetrack, my mind is connected to the tires. That's what I'm thinking of. And then the secondary type things are how I'm doing that. You know, I'm not really thinking anymore about braking and shifting and turning and my grip. Those levels of thinking I keep for how's the engine doing, how's the braking. And in that circumstance, for you guys driving on the street, your connection should also effectively be to the tires. And what is the road doing? And then leaving your other levels of thinking open for looking ahead. What are the road conditions? Is it wet? Is it raining? Is it snowing? What do I see? Do I think there's grip up there? Do I not? What are other cars doing? Is there anybody likely to pull out in front of me? Are there animals or birds or weather? Do you have distractions in your car that you need to keep chill? So just like a racing driver that's thinking of their connection to the road and their situational awareness of maybe what position they're in, what's happening to their car, how they can maximize performance, even if it's just a soccer mom going to practice on the highway and through suburbia, same kind of things. You're thinking about your connection to your road, as well as all those other secondary, or those like smaller level of thinking when you're just keeping your awareness up and everything like that. So braking, Casey, get to the point. Braking and how hard you brake has everything to do with your tempo and what you're doing during the course of the day. I'm driving on a generally relatively sunny day. I've got the road to myself. I'm driving reasonably. So there's no sense for me to just wail on the brakes like an idiot, okay? Like that. Now I know there's nobody behind me, so I wouldn't just do that. But if you're driving, accelerate and brake and turn at rates and levels of performance, okay, that makes sense for the type of driving you're doing. And that's just good for your fellow motorists, as well as anybody that might be a pedestrian or somebody pulling out on the street, as well as people in your car. And beyond that, even if you don't have anybody else around, if you accelerate really, really hard and brake really soft or don't turn, I mean, like, what are you doing, you know? Or if you're the kind of person that just wheels on the brakes, it turns into an intersection, something like that, people aren't expecting that. So just find a tempo that makes sense. Now, going back to my earlier conversation about thinking of your traction on the road, as an example, this Dodge Viper that I'm driving right now does not have traction control. It does not have ABS. So that is in no way a detriment to the car. That just means that the driver has got to be the traction control and the ABS. And I say that because it is most likely that you are driving a vehicle that has ABS and likely traction control. The more modern vehicle you have, you may have stability control and lots of great things like that that make it easy for you to not make a mistake and not necessarily get in over your head. Of course, there's no system in the world that can save you from doing massive amounts of speed. It can't save you from doing the maximum performance of your brakes or your tires. So those are just things to smooth it out. If you make a mistake, if there's ice you don't see, stuff like that. But I bring that up because of this. And young people need to realize this. Even if you're driving modern cars, whether it's like a Toyota or something with traction control, or hey, somebody throws you the keys to a new Ferrari that's got all these stability things and all whatnot on it, you still need to think about the car's traction and think with your mind of what the tires can do and have a feel for that. Because if you were driving to that limit, those stability controls, traction controls, and ABS aren't going to have to do as much work, or any, if that makes sense. If you drive a car like an idiot all the time, and you're just wailing on the brakes and getting the ABS to come on, and you're just wailing on the throttle and traction control saving your butt, and you just suck through the corners and the stability control is going all nuts, you're kind of a crappy driver. And I will never be throwing you the keys to something like this, or a vintage car that you could easily put yourself into a world of hurt. And frankly, that's why you'll hear me rant occasionally on my channel about how paddle shifters kind of ruin sports cars and racing, because you don't actually have to be any good to drive modern exotic cars. You can be a terrible driver, but it's easier for companies to sell cars to people and make more money and make it safer. The only downside to that is it makes racing more boring and cars more boring for people that actually know what to do. So, braking. Usually when I'm out there and it's raining or something like that, I'm so accustomed to not thinking of ABS that when ABS kicks in, oftentimes it'll tick me off, because depending on how sophisticated your ABS is, it's an old ABS system, a really good driver can beat it, truth be told. That being said, if you're just locking up your brakes, you're not going to turn. You're just going to slide wherever it is that your car is going. Whereas ABS, if you're a person that's likely to lock up your brakes for whatever given reason, it saves your butt, because it allows the wheels to still spin enough that they can get traction and you can turn. A lot of people that wrecked Dodge Vipers when they were new did so because they went really fast, had a lot of kinetic energy, and then went around something, wailed on the brakes, no ABS. They weren't ready to modulate it. They got in way over their heads, and the car slid straight into whatever. So I bring that up just for you guys. So I'm coming up to a stop sign here. Obviously got to brake. I'm going to stick shift the car. I'm going to do this really lazy. I'm not going to downshift like I'm racing, not being real sporty. I'm just going to start braking. And I want to show you the first little mistake I see people do. So I'm coming up to a stop sign. I'm maintaining a certain pressure on it. I push into my clutch. I'm maintaining the same pressure, and boom. You see how my head kind of bounced back like that? The reason being is I was maintaining a constant rate of braking, a constant rate of pressure. Tell you what, I'm gonna go straight. Constant rate of pressure on the brakes. Now, when the car actually came to the moment that there's no more speed and it stopped, that very little moment changes the nature of the way friction works on the brake discs, and your suspension that was loading up on the front from the weight transfer, when you stop, there's no more weight transfer, so the suspension springs back. So you get that really annoying bounce effect that I remember from being a child when I was riding with my grandfather. I'm gonna do it one more time. I'm just gonna brake at a constant rate, just hold my foot in one spot, watch, braking, 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 and we come up to a stop. It's really annoying. So if you're driving normally and you're finding that your friend, your mother, grandmother, kid is doing that, then be like, okay, hold on, because the first annoying thing is a lot of people that do that think it's funny, because they're expecting it, but their passengers aren't, and it's really annoying, and it'll make you car sick. Oh God, I hate riding with people that make me car sick. So as an example, when you're braking, you know, here I am doing the exact same thing. Got my constant rate of braking pressure. Doesn't matter if it's manual or automatic. I just have to push in the clutch. And as I'm coming up to a stop, I push in the clutch, and as I know I'm about to, I start letting off the brake gently, like that. And I let the suspension unload at a reasonable rate. And that's something you can feel. And by doing that, you don't get that whiplash action, okay? That's really, really annoying. So let me do it one more time. I'm gonna illustrate just braking at a constant rate. So I'm just gonna push the brake pedal, maintaining a constant rate, watch what happens to my head and body. It bounces. Really annoying. Don't do that. Don't do that, people. So in this time, I'm gonna go about the same exact thing. I'm gonna have my constant rate of braking. And the other thing good about a constant rate of braking, it keeps people from feeling car sick. So I got my constant rate of braking. I'm gonna slow down and stop right here. As I come to a stop, I'm letting off the brake gently, letting the suspension unload. Real nice, real nice, easy. Now, I bring that up because that's a way to courteously drive for people. Maintain a constant ease into the brake as you're driving on the street. You know, roll into it, don't just wail on it, okay, unless you have to. This is for comfort driving, okay? Brake at your constant, reasonable rate of speed. And if you need to adjust braking pressure, a little less, a little more, do it gently. Don't be just like, If you do that, you suck at driving and it's really annoying. Just don't do that, okay? And when you're coming up to that stop, you can anticipate where it is. Clearly, you're an intelligent adult and you know what you're doing, and you can gently let off the brake pedal pressure just at that last moment. Now, of course, don't go running into the back of somebody like an idiot and blaming me. You suck at driving, okay? If you have to practice that, you need to work on your driving, go somewhere where no one is, and just be smooth, okay? But don't go blaming me because I'm just talking about good things for driving. It's still up to you to be a safe and thoughtful driver. If you're not comfortable with something, clearly don't do it where you can put yourself in trouble. Get it? We can all be responsible for ourselves. This is not a new concept, okay? So anyway, that's something I really wanted to bring up. Now, if you're braking hard, really hard, just think of that. If you don't have ABS, you need to figure out where that threshold is, that limit where the tires will break loose, okay? Now that is a perfectly good example of why there are some schools out there that are good to go to for new drivers. I remember when I was a teenager, about 15 and a half, had my learner's permit. My dad actually sent me to the Mid-Ohio school that was actually at the racetracks, but this was their teen defensive driving program. It was not held on the racetrack. And it was a place for teens to learn skid control on the skid car, learn braking techniques, wet braking techniques, so if you don't have ABS, you can still brake hard and turn and come to a controlled stop. So that was a really great thing that I was glad my dad did. It helped me as a safer driver. It ended up helping me as a performance driver, just being a good driver all around and being respectful of my machine and the conditions around. So if you're gonna test these things out, I suggest finding a place like the Mid-Ohio School for like a teen defensive driving program or some sort of program for older people, adults, etc., or even just a high performance initial class will help you know what you need to do on the street. And more so than just cars, I highly, highly recommend people that are getting into motorcycle riding, please go to some kind of class or school where you can test the limits of your machine, your bike, in a safe environment. Because the young people or older people that just hop on a motorcycle, first of all, everybody has way too big an ego and jumps on way too fast to bikes. The only thing you have keeping you safe on a motorcycle, forget your safety equipment, that's not going to do squat if you screw up too big, is your ability to ride that machine for all that it's worth. I mean, braking, handling, acceleration. If you can't ride that machine, you're not comfortable on it at the limits of adhesion where it might start sliding as a motorcycle, then you're not as safe as you can be. So I urge you to think about that when you're braking, because it's even more important on a bike. If I can't ride a motorcycle for almost all it's worth, you're not safe, okay? So think about that. Same holds true with cars, but of course you can get away with more in cars. And of course, people that are going to drive less sporty can get away with more than people who are going to drive sporty. So I just want to bring that up. So when you're out there driving, you need to think about smooth on, smooth off. You got to think of not only the limited adhesion of your tires, but how your suspension compresses. So if you're turning left or right and your car rolls a lot, then you need to realize that that's a lot of control that's happening for how your car springs. It bounces on and off, and those are things that can get cars out of shape. So keep that in mind. The other thing I want to say is, if you're braking or if you're accelerating, that means your tires have less ability to turn, okay? I want you to think about that a little bit. If you're braking as hard as you can, don't expect to be able to just turn real sharp, okay? And if your tires are sliding, you can turn a wheel, it's not gonna do squat. They're just gonna keep going straight, okay? So if you need to maintain directional control and steer, well, you can't be sliding, or you need to use less brakes. That's why they call it kind of trail braking. Like if you're braking really hard on a racetrack, on a street, you're braking for a corner, and if you overshoot the corner, you need the hard brakes to not go off the road, don't expect to turn much. So if you miss the apex of the turn-in, you might take the corner wide because you're using the tires for all they're worth. And the same thing holds true on a racetrack. So, you know, you can do the maximum amount of braking in a straight line, but if you're gonna trail some of the braking into the entrance of the corner, well, then you gotta start being able to get off the brake pedal and brake a little bit less as you turn in like that. Now, of course, there's possibilities that the rear end might step out because it's real lightweight, but that gets into more advanced things relating to suspension setup and whatnot. So I just wanna keep you guys this sort of thing in mind. Always be thinking of the traction of your tires and the limited adhesion for your conditions. If you're following somebody super close and they hit something or something happens that you can't see, you've got less time to react or brake, clearly. The other thing I gotta tell you that drives me bonkers is people do those stupid examples of like, if you're doing 75 miles an hour on the highway or something and something falls off the back of a vehicle and you're too close, it'll hit you at 75 miles an hour. Well, that's not exactly true, because if something falls off of a vehicle, it's going the same speed as the vehicle, and it takes a while for that thing to slow down. So if I was theoretically tailgating something, I saw something fall off the car, that doesn't mean you only have that amount of time to stop. The thing's probably gonna roll. I just wanna say that, because it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen, like on Mythbusters and stuff, that they always forget that, but that doesn't mean you should be tailgating people. I just wanna say it. But just keep in mind of how much does your car weigh, how quickly can it brake, what's the limited adhesion of your tires, how bouncy is your suspension, or how much does your car roll, and just be thinking of that when you're driving, because if you're always minding that and what your vehicle or motorcycle, whatever it is capable of doing, then you just have to be aware of your circumstances to keep yourself into a safe realm. One can drive sporty, or one can go to the racetrack and drive very, very fast because they are aware of their surroundings, they're aware of the conditions, or the best way they can judge it, especially when you go around the track a bunch of times, you kind of know what you're gonna have unless it starts raining in one spot. And they know the performance of their machine, unless of course the performance of your machine changes and it breaks a little bit. So these are the best piece of advice I can give young and old people when they're driving, just in the nature of braking. Being smooth is always better than being harsh, because when you're harsh, if I just like wheel on the brakes, it sends in what's basically called an impact load, or a spike. And that spike, if it's like the spike in the amount of torque you put into the brakes, torque to slow down the vehicle, if you have a big spike, that's when your wheel can break loose and start to skid. That's why even if you do it quickly and crisply, like I'll do it right now, there's nobody behind me. So if I want to get on the brakes hard, I'm still going to do it like gentle hard, okay? And what I'm not going to do, I hope everybody's going to think I'm a lunatic, is just go bam like that. Don't just wail on it. It's not a light switch, okay? You can hit it hard and you can go to full, but you need to do it quick, okay? And smooth transitions on and off, whether you're driving Miss Daisy in a limousine or you're in a race car. The only time it gets a little more light switchy is if you're at top speed in a Formula car with a ton of downforce and you just, bam, you hit the brakes hard, because that's when you have the most, and you need that right now. But of course, even in that, you kind of got to get off at the end. So that's it, guys. Please be safe. Don't do anything in an area where you're not aware of your circumstances or the performance of your machine. If you don't feel like you have a comfortable way to learn the limits of your vehicle, then I urge you to find a school, kind of like Mid-Ohio School's Teen Defensive Driving Program or something like that. I'm not in any way affiliated with them. I just did it once a long time ago and I found it helpful, so hey, why not throw them a bone? But be safe and smart, and don't be like my grandpa did and be like off the brakes like this, trying to make me sick because he thinks it's funny when I was a little kid. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.